Welcome friends to Farm Fresh Designs 59. If you're new to my channel, welcome. And if you're returning, thank you so much for your support. Now make sure to stay till the end to see some special projects. But let's get started. So this first project is actually something that I wanted to do when the spring release was first put out. But I just had so many other things to do that I just kind of put these back. And these are these little cardboard boxes that you can get at Hobby Lobby in graduating sizes. And I painted one with Rust-Oleum Blush Pink. And the second one, the green one, is painted with Dixie Belle Mint Julep. And then the last one is just painted with Rust-Oleum Linen White. Now this transfer set that I'm using comes from Timeless Designs. And I've used it so many times on my channel, and you can get it on Amazon. And it's a mother and a daughter company. Now, I did not paint the bottom of these little canisters in the beginning. I painted those at the very end. So with this particular transfer set, it comes with 3 different sheets. And so my goal on this particular project was to just use one of the sheets and to see how far I could get it on all of these 3 little canisters or these 3 little boxes all at one time. And so I just cut it a little bit here and a little bit there. But now remember, before you put on transfers, it's so important to put on a sealer, and I use Rust-Oleum Matte Sealer in just a spray can. So I had all of these boxes sprayed and just put up for when I was ready to use it. So when you put the transfer set on it, you rub it on with the little transfer stick, and then you go back over it with that plastic and just rub over it, and that's called burnishing it. Now the next one that I'm going to be putting on, I'm still trying to just use that one sheet. And so I'm just kind of bend it over a little bit, and then I cut it from the back side. And now when I'm putting these transfers on, I've got the lid sitting on top of it because I don't really need that transfer to go up underneath the lid. So that's why there's like a little gap in it. And then once all of those get finished up, then I do the lids with just some extra little pieces just from that one sheet from that transfer set. And then when I finished with all 3 of them, then I took them back outside and sprayed them again with Rust-Oleum Clear Sealer just to put that added protection on it. So I'm just going to let you sit back and look at these 3 beautiful little graduating canisters. My next piece is a little thrifted wooden shoe, and I'm using the IOD primitive mold. And the reason that I'm using this particular mold is because it has a little tulip on it. And that just reminds me of being in the Netherlands and seeing all of the beautiful fields of tulips. And then while I was over there, I also purchased a pair of the wooden shoes. And I know that it was really touristy, but I didn't care because I knew that that might be the only time I would ever be over there. And so I still have those shoes, but I'm not going to do anything to them. I love them just the way they are. So I'm using the DOS air dry clay. And on the front of the shoe, I'm going to be putting several different molds. And what I like is that this particular mold has symmetrical molds. And so I'll be putting the tulip right in the center. And then right above it, I'll be using the little, I guess it's like a little star-shaped flower. And then on either side, up at the front, I put the little birds. And then right from the base of the tulip, going up the edges, I'm using the little pieces of greenery. Now, it's sort of tricky because this particular shoe, it's kind of hard to get them on without, letting them slide down when you first put that glue on it. So it took just a little bit just to even get the molds to stay on it. So I had to be really careful, and I would do one side of the shoe and let it set up just a little bit before I would go and then do the other side of the shoe. And I know typically when you see these shoes, they're more in the bright colors, but because I wanted this to fit more for like spring colors, these are why I did more pastel colors. Now at the back, I'm going to be using that same mold, and right at the base, at the bottom, I put the mold of the little heart. And then I'm going back and using those little pieces of greenery, and they'll kind of come up the side at the back of the shoe. Now this one was even harder to kind of get it to settle in, just because there's not a really good way to set this shoe up so that you don't have to worry about them sliding around. And I could have used like painter's tape to tape them down, but I just decided that I would just take my time with it. And I did. I went and painted all the way on the inside of the shoe, except for at the very tip of it. And because I used more pastel colors, I actually took a darker pink and a lighter pink and kind of mixed them together to get the color that I wanted in the birds and in the heart. And the darker pink was actually a Waverly color that I found recently at Walmart. And it's not a Walmart that I usually go to. And it's called Pink Sky. And I just think it's such a pretty darker pink. But I added some of the Rust-Oleum blush pink with it just to kind of lighten it up a little bit so that it would be more pastel. But on the little tulip, I just used the Rust-Oleum blush pink without adding in that Waverly Pink Sky. And then when I got all of it painted, then I decided I needed it to be just a little bit more pastel. So I used Dixie Belle White Wax to soften it up just a little bit. So if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel and become part of our family. So my next two projects are just some little shelf sitters. So the first one I'm going to make, I'm using this rice paper from Decoupage Central, and I'll make sure to link it in the description box below. but it's just some pretty little owls, and they have spring colors. So I just use my water pen to go around the edges, and then that just makes it tear so much easier. And if you don't have a little water pen, you can just take a paintbrush and dip it in some water, and that just helps that paper to soften up just enough to where it tears really easy. Now I'm going to be putting it on this little teeny cutting board, and you can get these at Hobby Lobby for every different season. And so when I decide where I'm going to place it, then what I do is I actually start gluing it down from the bottom, because I want to make sure that I get it in just the right spot. And then what I do is I put just a little bit of glue down, and then I'll use like a little piece of cellophane to kind of get the wrinkles out, and then I'll pull it back, and then I'll use just a little bit more glue, and then put a little bit more down, and then just keep that process until I get all my way to the end. So because this little owl is just so dainty, I decided to pull out my IOD laurel mold and make the little mold of the crown. It's actually the smaller one, and I make it with air dry clay. And then I just glue it on with Tight Bond Thick and Quick. Now, I know that a lot of times when you think about crowns, you think about, having some metallic gold on it, but I didn't think it would look right with these particular colors. So I used just white, and I used some Dixie Belle Natural stain to kind of soften it up. And then I put a little bow up at the top. Now this second project, this is just like a little wooden candlestick, and I paint it with Dixie Belle English Ivy, and then the little wood sign that I'm going to be gluing to the top of it just came from Michael's in the Dollar Spot. So on the inside, I'm just using a piece of fabric from burlapfabric.com, and then I'm going to be putting just a little piece of decoupage paper that's a wheelbarrow that's got some daisies, and I'll just be decoupaging that right onto the fabric. Now this little crackle stamp, I just got this off of Amazon, and the reason I'm using this one is because it has a smaller crackle to it than the IOD. And then on the back side of it, because I want to make sure that I get the most for my money, then on the back side of it, I just used some paper from Tim Holtz. It's called collage paper, and it's called Aviary. And it's so pretty, and it's got some script on it, and it's got some birds on it, and it's so, so pretty. And it comes in like this little roll first, and it's got 6 yards in it. And I believe I got this at Hobby Lobby. Now, on this particular one, I went on and put the glue on the back side of that sign before I even laid the paper down, just because when I laid this paper down, I wanted that bird to be right in the middle. So now I'm going to pull out my IOD Conservatory Labels mold, and I use my air dry clay with it. And I'm going to be putting that only on the outside of it with that Tim Holtz paper. Now this mold came out in the spring release, and I love it. I just think it's awesome. And then the little alphabet set that kind of goes along with it is the IOD Apothecary Labels. And it's a wonderful stamp set as well. Now, for some of you, you might have wanted it and you wasn't able to get it, but Decoupage Central still has some of these because they were able to get a lot of them. And so if you want some, I'll make sure to put the link in the description box below. So I paint my mold with white, and then I stamp those little letters right into that clay. And then I use Dixie Belle Natural stain with it, and that just sort of highlights the details of it. And these are my 2 little shelf sitters. So what do you think so far? Now, my last little sign before I get to the surprise projects is from Decoupage Central, and John L. sent me this paper, and it's a really large piece of this paper. Now, back, I think it was maybe even after Christmas, I used this same paper, but it was a smaller size of it. And when I got this, I really like all the flowers in it, so I decided to just take advantage of the flowers in it. So this is just a little sign, and I painted it with Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint, and I stamped it with the IOD kindest regards. So when you put decoupage paper down, or rice paper, whatever you want to call it, if you put it straight onto a white background, then you're good to go. But if I had not painted the back side of this decoupage paper with paint, then when I glued it on, you would see that lettering from the kindest regards. So I just like to paint the back of it, and then that way that doesn't kind of seep up from the bottom and show. And then I just paint the back of it and set it off to the side. And I kind of tore it at like a little angle, because down at the bottom, once again, I want to use that IOD conservatory labels, and then I just use some French writing, and I just kind of use those little apothecary labels to stamp the word right into the clay. Now, when you do that, sometimes it will kind of distort the little rectangle of that label. So I just use like a little credit card or a gift card, and I kind of like push it up against it and make it be a rectangle again. And then I put the Dixie Belle Natural Voodoo Gel Stain on it, and that just brings out the details. And I just love this red flower, and I used some of that Voodoo Gel Stain in the natural to kind of go around all the edges and just make that little decoupage paper just kind of fade into the background. So what do you think? So my surprise projects that you did not see in the picture that shows up on YouTube is some decoupage paper that John L. from Decoupage Central sent me recently. And I was so excited, I just had to go ahead and do it. So these are just some little signs that I bought off of Amazon. And they come in a pack, I think, of 6 or 8. And so I'm just using just the top side of it, and I paint them with Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint. And I do 2 of these because the decoupage paper is patriotic, and with Memorial Day coming up at the end of May, I thought these were really appropriate. And so once again, I just put a little bit of glue up at the top, and this one is a soldier, and he's kind of squatted down, and there's the flag in the background, and there's some writing kind of that's really muted, and it's just the beginning words of the Constitution. And I just think it's so, so pretty. And then on this piece of decoupage paper, there's some smaller graphics that you can use as well. And then once they're glued down, I'll let them dry for just a little bit, and then I'll go back over it with some sandpaper and sand off the little rough edges of it. And then I use a little piece of cellophane paper to kind of smooth out any wrinkles. Now on the second sign is a graphic of an eagle that's kind of sitting on top of like some rocks, and he's sitting in front of the American flag. So I just think these 2 pieces are so perfect, especially with Memorial Day coming up, and you could even have these ready for the 4th of July, but I just think they're so pretty, and I was so excited when she sent me these papers, and I just had to go ahead and get them ready for this particular video. Now, on these particular signs, I didn't want to do anything else on the background because I wanted to make sure that the graphics showed up really well. But I wanted to add a little bit of extra, so I used that IOD conservatory labels on both of them. And then with the apothecary labels, I stamped some words in it. And on the sign with the soldier, then I pressed in the letters that spell hero. And then on the labels that goes with the eagle, I stamped in the word freedom because I just think they're so appropriate. So what do you think about these? I just love them. I just think that they are so wonderful for this time of the year and for 4th of July, and then you can use them again for Veterans Day. So if you have someone in your life who is a soldier or a veteran, these would make perfect gifts for them. And I hope you really like these signs because I just think they're pretty awesome. Now, my last little surprise that I've got is this really large paper that John L. sent me. And it's so awesome. It's got a barn on it, and it's got some music, like little music graphics on it. And I just love it because if you've, been with me for a little while on my channel, you know that, like, I'm from the country, and, my granddaddy had a farm, and, I just remember all those special memories that went along with that. So I love any kind of graphics of a barn. So this frame I actually thrifted, but it didn't have anything to go along with it. So I took a piece of cardboard, and I used that to put that decoupage paper on. And then because that cardboard kind of sticks right up inside of that frame really well, I really didn't even have to glue it in or anything. It's in there pretty tight. But I wanted to kind of spice up that frame a little bit. So these particular molds come from the IOD Dainty Flourishes. And I actually didn't use the entire mold. I kind of chopped it off about halfway because on the middle part of it, I used the IOD conservatory labels, this one particular, because it's kind of round, and I think it kind of mimics the top of the frame. And so I get all of those glued on, and then I kind of really am stuck with it. But you'll see how I finish it off in just a minute. But with this particular label, I didn't want to put a word in it, so I kind of left it blank for just a little while until I could figure out what I wanted to do with it at the end. Now this frame is just sort of plain, so I used my IOD Vintage Textures to put a crackle finish on it, and I used the IOD Stone Gray ink. But to highlight these molds, I went back and I used the Dixie Belle Voodoo Gel Stain in Natural. And once I finished putting that on, then I thought the frame was sort of kind of plain after that. So I ended up putting that gel stain all over it. And once again, I just want to give a big shout out to one of my viewers who last fall mentioned using this particular stain. She knows who she is, and she always watches my video. But every time I use this Voodoo Gel Stain in Natural, I always think of her because I didn't know they made this particular stain, and I like it so much better than some of the darker stains. So I had to think about it for just a little while, and so I decided to put some molds down at the bottom. And the two little corner pieces comes from the IOD Village Market. And it's not the little pieces of wheat, but it's just some little floral things. And then the other little mold I actually make with resin, and it's from the IOD Fleur de Lis mold, and it's the little rooster. And the reason that I made it with resin is because he's too big to to sit right at the corner of that frame, and he's going to kind of hang off a little bit. And because I don't want it to kind of break off later on, I decided to use the Amazing Casting Resin that sets up in about 10 minutes. And I put all of these down with the Tight Bond Thick and Quick. And I've already got those little pieces painted. And this time I think I painted, with maybe Rust-Oleum chiffon cream. And then I will go back after it's dry, and then I'll use that Dixie Belle Voodoo Gel Stain in Natural just so that it kind of goes along with the rest of it. And I only put molds on one side at the bottom of the frame because I thought if I put it a little bit on both sides, it was just going to be a little bit too much. But I thought it needed like a little farm animal in it. So I had a little bit of space down at the bottom, and I really couldn't decide what I wanted to do. So these are actually 2 little sticks, and I glued them together, and I'm using my IOD apothecary labels to put some different words on it. And at my age, one of my favorite singers when I was a teenager was John Denver, and he had that song, Country Roads Take Me Home. And so when I think about a barn and I think about going home to see my grandparents, it kind of reminded me of that. And I was talking to somebody recently who remembered that song. And I was talking about how much I had a crush on John Denver. I just thought he was just the cutest thing. And so when you stamp these little alphabet, you have to kind of do it in different pieces, especially with the little letters that you have to use more than once. But I like to use one of these little thin mounts, and that kind of keeps it all lined up. Now, my thin mounts are getting kind of dirty, and so I hope you kind of forgive me for that. I probably need to maybe cut up some different ones that are a little bit cleaner, but after a while, they do get kind of dirty. And then the top piece where I printed out the country roads, then I used one font, and then I used a different font down at the bottom that says Take Me Home. Now, I wasn't completely sold on the part of having this on the bottom of my frame, and so if I just had this little sticky, tacky stuff that teachers use when they want to put posters on walls, and I've got that on the back side of it, and it makes it stick to that little sign. And then that way, if I decide I don't like it later on, I can just pull it off and it won't mess up the decoupage paper. So then I found this little transfer that I decided I was going to put on the little center of that little conservatory label up at the top. And then when I was getting ready to put this sign on, I thought it's just a little bit too bright. So I used the IOD Vintage Textures with that crackle finish, and I stamped it, and then I put some of that Voodoo Gel Stain on it, and that kind of softened it up a little bit and made it look a little bit more rustic, and then I think I liked it a little bit more. So tell me, what do you think? Do you like the sign in the middle? It was just that it was a little bit too much space down at the bottom, and so I felt like it just needed something else. But because this frame, I had to actually use a piece of cardboard to make the backing of it, I could always use this frame for later and use another piece of cardboard and put like another piece of decoupage paper on it later. But I like the way this turned out, and it's pretty rustic. But I just like it because my granddaddy always had a barn because he had a farm. So friends, in the comments below, make sure to tell me what was your favorite today. And I just wanted to also share with you that yesterday, May the 5th, was my 1-year anniversary of being on YouTube. And I want to thank you so much for all of your support this past year and how you have made this experience so enjoyable. So thank you so much for all you've done to help this channel and to help this channel to grow. So friends, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And thank you so much, and I will see you in my next video.